Hello, BookTube, and welcome to New Worlds November. This is my second video for short story for Aliens Week. And this week I have read, this is the original story published in 1935. This is the March-April 1935 issue of the short-lived, semi-professional, mostly um, fan-based Marvel Tales of Science and Fantasy. You can see it's quite old, and there are quite a few other authors on there. Some of those may sound familiar to you. And The Creator by Clifford D. Simak. And there were only a couple hundred of these printed, so it was very short run, the whole magazine, as well as short print run for each issue. But I read it in Mike Ashley's edited The Mammoth Book of Extreme Science Fiction. This was published in 2006. I believe it's still in print. Pardon me. And I do apologize for the lateness of this video because it's been a rough couple days, and we'll see how this goes. But yeah, this is it was a story that was written in actually 1933, but didn't get published in 1935. I'll go into a little bit of that at the end. It's basically about it was considered a sacrilegious story, so we'll start from that. But it starts out with a little foreword, and I'll read a few bits and pieces here. Because it starts out and you think it might be a different kind of story than it actually turns out to be. It starts out with the narrator writing this. This is written in the elder days of the earth, as the earth rides close to the rim of eternity, edging nearer to the dying sun, into which our two inner companions of the solar system have already plunged to a fiery death. The twilight of the gods is history, and our planet drifts on and on into the oblivion from which nothing escapes, to which time itself may be dedicated in the final cosmic reckoning. And it is, Earth must mourn her passing, for she has stripped herself of all her gaudy finery and proud trappings. Upon her illimitable deserts and twisted ranges she has set up strange land sculptures, and these must be temples and altars before which she, not forgetting the powers of good and evil throughout the cosmos, prays in her last hours, like a dying man returning to his old faith. Morning breezes play a hymn of futility across her barren reaches of sand and rock ledges. The waters of the empty oceans beat up upon the treeless, bleak and age-worn coast, a march that is the last brave gesture of an ancient planet which has served its purpose and treads its path to nirvana. So, right at the beginning, we see, obviously, the Earth is dying. And it also says here, little half men and women, final survivors of a great race, which they remember only through legends handed down from father to son, burrow gnome-like in the bowels of the planet, which has mothered their seed from dim days, when the thing which was destined to rule over all his fellow creatures crawled in the slime of the primal seas. A tired race they await, for the day legend tells them will come when the sun blazes anew and the sky and grass grows green upon the barren deserts once again. But I know that day will never come, although I would not disillusion them. I know their legends lie. But why should I destroy the only solid thing they have left to round out their colorless lives with the everlasting phenomena of hope? So we've got, yeah, we're in a future dying planet, and the narrator here is treated as a demigod. He think that people think that he is the embodiment of this legend, and that everything will be okay. The sun will burn bright again, and the earth will be green again. So, but then we go into the actual story, and it starts out with two scientists, Pete and oh, I forget his other the other guy's name. Um, Scott. Pete and Scott, they're students. Pete is a psychology student, and Scott is into science and physics. And they share a apartment together, and they are, live very, very frugally. And then when they graduate together, and they both accept posts at the university, and they have their individual research. Uh, Scott has a belief that there is some time mechanism or time power out there. So he's working on creating a machine to harness this, or to see what this is. And Pete believes that through dreams and that thoughts, that there is actually some kind of force that goes outside of the body, or the thoughts that go outside of the body. So they still living frugally and doing all their research happily, and then Scott inherits a modest fortune, it says. And so they both decide to quit their jobs and go fully into research and building his machine. And he takes years and years of toil and trouble, and he finally creates this machine. And they put in a plant, and the plant disappears, but the pot stays and the dirt stays. So they know only organic material can be moved, but they believe it's going into another dimension. But he calls it a time power machine, and because this is happening, he hooks Pete up to this with some electrodes, or headgear, and he dreams, he sees this laboratory, this big otherworldly laboratory, and he's able to describe it in detail. And then he's able to they're able to share this kind of dream. So they want to go there. So they rework the machine, and they actually send themselves there. Only the organic material, so they wind up as nude as the day they're born in this laboratory. And there's this cone of light creature that's there that can telepathically speak to them. And he tells them that he's the creator, and this is his laboratory. And there are other aliens there as well. There's like two that are almost like they have a proboscis, like an elephant's tusk, elephant's trunk, and there's another one is like a very stick like person. But they're obviously very smart, because they're able to get to his laboratory. And he tells them that he's doing research and creating matter, and he shows them basically a beaker that says that's your universe. So he created the universe, and then he thought projected, sort of to try to create life. And this is what's happened with the life, is that they have the Pete and Scott's and their alien companions are the fruition of this life that he is sparked in this universe. So he's the creator. So they stay there for a little while, but they've got to build another machine to get back to back to Earth. And they know this works now, and they figure that all of time is opened up to them. And but this universe is in a beaker, so they're in a different dimension, in a different time, that their bodies have acclimatized to the environment, that they are billions of times bigger. No more. It's explained that there's no extra mass for them. It's just the space between the atoms have grown bigger, so it allows them to do this. Yeah, it's, you accept this for the story. So anyway, and then the creator, Pete is able to sort of hide his thoughts and stuff like this. So he's trying to find a little more about the creator. Scott is a little hesitant, and he thinks there's something strange going on here. But they're building their machines, each of the races. They can't really communicate with them. But Pete can't really do much about the building or helping, so he lets Scott do it. So he's trying to probe the mind a little bit of the creator. So he finds out that the creator wants to destroy the universe because it's fulfilled his purpose, his experiment. So he's going to destroy it. So he's horrified for this because it means his planet and his alien companions' planets and the whole universe is going to be destroyed. Or universes, possibly more than one. But anyway, and so they try to figure out a way of saving this, but actually it looks like the other aliens have already twigged onto this as well. And the stick guy was building a machine not to get back to his own planetary system, but to somehow defeat the creator. So he's got like a beam of light that will sort of shock the creator, and it actually creates a sort of a shield for the creator, and it sort of works out that the creator has actually created a being that is actually smarter and more technology than he is to a certain extent. So they grab the speaker and they run into this other room, and the stick person surrounds the room with this purple shield and lifts it up through the air, and then just continually wrapping it around, and then sends a bolt of this down somehow, and it kills the creator and the whole laboratory. But they don't see anybody else, so they think that he could be a lone survivor of his own race, or whatever. They don't really know any background to this person. And as they continue, their machine is ready, and the ones that have the elephant tusk or trunk aliens are ready to leave. But the stick guy didn't build the machine to get back home. He built it to protect the universe. So they continually wrap this. He wraps the layer upon layer of this shield over the universe and this room to keep everything safe. And so that's where it sort of, that part ends in a certain sense, because they get back into their machine and they try to tell the other guy, they can use their machine, he can use it to get back to his own time. So they flip the switch, and Pete has forgotten the fact that because every second that's happened into the universe, or the meta universe that they are, the greater universe or dimension that they're in, time has moved very differently. So every second is like a million years or hundreds of thousands of years. So when he winds up back on Earth, but it's as he is at the beginning here, he's in the dying days of the Earth, and he's writing this story, and he wonders near the end again whether Scott had got back home to his own time, or is he searching now for him throughout time and space, searching for his friend Pete. And he wonders too if the others got back home and the stick alien got back home. And that's where it is. But it was a sacrilegious kind of story, because he wrote it at a time. I need to back up a little bit. At the time, he wrote it in 1933, and this was obviously during the Depression, and Clifford Simak was already writing for Astounding and a few Thrilling Wonder stories. His first story was in Thrilling Wonder Stories 1931, 32, 32, 31, 31. I think it was, yeah. Um, and he wrote other stories for Astounding, but Astounding sort of went on hiatus, and other magazines sort of folded or disappeared or didn't get started. So he sort of thought, well, he didn't really like Clifford Simak didn't really like the way stories were going as well, with amazing and pure super science with not much other depth to it, and supermen type beings. Even though he used some of these tropes for his own stories, but he infused in this story especially a lot of religion. And a previous one, Voices from the Void, he had some religion too, and it had to do with the Martian, a religious thing, and people. So he's questioning things, and this was something new for science fiction as well, new-ish, I should say. And he did these things very well, even though there's issues with the creator. It's a product of its time, but it struck a chord. But he wrote it sort of on, not really on spec, because he said if he thought there was there's a quote here somewhere, had there been a market, the story would never have been written, for I would have slanted for the market. And this is Clifford Simak speaking to Sam Moskowitz, and there's an essay in Seekers of Tomorrow, published in 1966 in book form. The essay would have been published a year or two earlier, probably, in Amazing Stories. Or Astounding, but I think Amazing Stories. And so he wrote this purely for himself in a certain sense, and then William H. Crawford was a fan, and he wanted to start what he called a literary science fiction magazine. So he wanted stories, but he couldn't pay anybody, but he offered a lifetime membership to his magazine, which didn't last very long. But anyway, Simak sort of said that anybody who was crazy enough to start a magazine under these science fiction magazine under these conditions needs all the help he can get. So he gave him the creator, and that's where it was published in this year edition. Like, it's a bit rough. There's a bit missing from the spine at the top, and it's cracked other places. It's very fragile. It is a pulp magazine, but it's a tinier pulp magazine. And you can say it was 15 cents in 1935. And there was maybe a couple hundred printed, and that's it. So this is fairly rare. And I'm glad I do have it. I got it many years ago, 25, 30 years ago. But I guess, yeah, it's going on 30 years now I've had it. It's one of the few things I brought with me from Canada because I wanted to keep it. And I should have brought his very first published story in Thrilling Wonder stories as well, but I didn't. I'm hoping it's still around, but I'll have to. Well, it's around other places to buy it, but it's very expensive now. But anyway, if anybody's interested, that's called The World of the Red Sun. It's a time travel story. But so is this the creator's a bit of a time travel story too. So I could have potentially used it for a time travel situation, but I wanted to use it as Alien, for the Alien one, because it combines some interesting things. But yeah, so and it got around to other fans, like through letters and word of mouth. People were aware of this, but it didn't really get reprinted very often. And he was honored in 1980. I think it was in the early 80s, there was a Locust reprinted it into a limited edition of 500 that had appreciations from Isaac Asimov, Robert Heinlein, Frederick Pohl, and I forget who else. There's four, and off the top of my head, I can't remember the fourth one. But it was like a stapled little pamphlet, but there was also 30 hardcovers done, which is very pricey. I'd love to have one of the inscribed hardcovers, and there was only 10 of those on handmade paper, and it was handmade, I think, as well. But yeah, and he just it gained momentum, and it's well thought of, even though with its with its flaws. Um, yeah, because like here, there's a few books that I just sort of refreshing my memory. Here's about the only actual study of Clifford Simak's work is "When the fires burn high and the wind is from the north." That's the first line from the editorial section of City. And it's the pastoral science fiction of Clifford Simak by Robert J. Ewald. It's the Milford series of popular writers of today. It's a Borgo Press publication, which is Wildside. We've already come across these. This was done in 2006. And yeah, and he talks about here that, that, the theme was so different, questioning the existence and character of God, and its ending so disturbing that no other editor would accept it. Now, that was input from Clifford Simak, as there's a footnote there that he allowed Clifford Simak to read that chapter before he had died. So this was to be in writing for a long time, because Clifford Simak died in 1988. So Ewald's been took a long time to do this. And it's basically here. It's just here's another brief sort of example of, a description of it. In The Creator, two scientist heroes build a time-powered machine that takes them to a super universe where they meet a telepathic being who created Earth and the rest of the universe as a laboratory experiment. When the Creator attempts to destroy the primary universe, and hence all universes, the protagonists, with the aid of other aliens who stumbled into the Creator's lair, destroy the Creator in his laboratory. The hero narrator is not rewarded for killing God, in quotation marks, and saving the universe, but returns to Earth millions of years later as a tribal chief and demigod of the last inhabitants of the dying planet. So again, even it ends that he is, it's a religious aspect to it. And it has that has been its reputation throughout, and it is one of the earlier ones that deal with that kind of in working it into science fiction. So these are, and also too, I was looking at here. There's the voice. It's a very plain cover. Voices for the future by it's edited by Thomas D. Clarison by Bowling Green University Popular Press, 1976. And there were hardcovers and paperbacks. I was only able to get a paperback of this, and it's a whole number of authors writing about other science fiction authors or subject matter, but mostly authors. And Thomas D. Clarison has written his essay on Simak in here. As I say, it's a very, very plain, book, but it's very good. But anyway, yeah, that is the second one for Aliens. And as I say, we could have did this for Time Machine as well. At time travel, but I will be back tomorrow on Saturday, fingers crossed, with my book to film, which is The Thing. I think I will only have time to deal with the original 1951 version, directed by Christian Nyby. And wow, that's questionable whether it was directed by him or not. But it's a Howard Hawks production, and I will be discussing that from the original novella and the newly found Frozen Hell that was newly found in archives that has a bigger prologue sort of to the story. But we'll discuss all that as well in the video. And then next week will be robots and AI. So just a brief, and I'll mention this again in my Friday reads, but a brief explanation of what I'll be doing for that. I will be reading a robot story. Well, I'll be reading 2 short robot stories, possibly 3. I'll be reading iRobot, but wait for it, not Clifford Simak's iRobot. It's by Iando Binder. And it was originally published in Amazing Stories in the 30s, before Isaac Asimov wrote his iRobot. It's part of a series, and we'll get to that. And then the other story, and of course it's going to be a Simak story. Let's see if I can get it here. It's in the complete short fiction of Clifford Simak. This one's titled I Am Crying All Inside and Other Stories. And it is, let me just move that, it's a bit annoying. It is called All the Traps of Earth. It should be in this one. Yes, All the Traps of Earth, which was published, I believe, in, it's a bit of a novella. It's a little longer than it. Well, it's a long short story. Let's put it that way. It was published in 1960 in the magazine of fantasy and science fiction, and that was after being refused by Horace Gold for Galaxy, which he had published a lot of material in up to that point, and it was refused by John W. Campbell as well. So that is going to be those 2, and there might be another Simak one called Skirmish. It's actually the original name is To Bathe Your Bearings in Blood. I just love that, but that'll be the 2 short stories, possibly 3. And the film will be 2001: A Space Odyssey by Arthur C. Clarke. Now, this is a bit of a cheat for a couple things. The film, the basis of the film was a short story of his called The Sentinel, and I have complete short stories that I'll be reading it from, complete short stories of Arthur C. Clarke. But then there is the book as well that was written along with the film of 2001, and that fits in because just under, at least my copy is just under, the text is just under 250 pages, so we will squeeze that in. But anyway, there is the second video on aliens for New Worlds November. I hope you enjoyed it. Do you like other religious science fiction stories? What are your favorites? And do you like Clifford Simak? I'd love to hear those that love Simak. And if you haven't read Clifford Simak, I urge you to read Clifford Simak. Take care, BookTube. Until next time.